come talk to him, please. Over here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. I'd like to associate my comments with Mr. Curtin's comments regarding storage capacity. We believe that this is an important aspect and part of the entire overall water system, and I feel like during this drought, storage, the lack of storage has never been more pronounced. We believe that storage helps the entire system, whether it's from providing clean drinking water to just providing drinking water to areas of the state when there's a drought. I'd like to thank Senator Woke for her time and her staff's time in talking to us about our concerns. We look forward to keeping those conversations going as we move forward. And finally, I'd like to pick up on a point that Senator Pavley made in the beginning, which is needing an identified water source for construction. I represent construction workers. We want to make sure that the system is stable enough moving forward that there's water available for new construction. Water is an economic driver in this state. Agriculture is the obvious one, but also in terms of construction, as Ms. Pavley said, we need to have an identified source of water for every new construction project. We want to make sure that the system is stable enough to not only help provide clean drinking water and water to the citizens of the state, but also to ensure that the construction industry can thrive as well as the agricultural industry. For those reasons, we have to oppose unless amended unless there's more storage in the bond, but we're happy to continue the conversation moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Harris, are we here? Or is that?
Go that way.
That way?
This young lady.
That way. Thank you for keeping track. So here, and then to Mr. Harris, to you, and then over here to the right. Okay?
Good morning, Chair Pavley and committee members. Thank you for your time today. My name is Carrie Schmitz. I'm with Sacramento County. I'm a principal civil engineer with the Department of Water Resources. The county, we are here in support of the bill today. Specifically, we appreciate Senator Walk's appropriation of $800 million towards the Delta Conservancy projects. In addition, I'd like to echo those comments made by a number of folks regarding the importance of working through the integrated regional water management plan program. That's our best shot at a truly regional effort to solve our water issues. So thank you again for your time today, and thank you, Senator Walk.
Thank you.
Senator, there we go. Stopwatch.
Go.
Ma'am, let me make two brief points. Richard Harris on behalf of the Water Reuse Association. Recycled water in this state really is your only new source of water. Every dollar that you spend to recycle a drop of water, a gallon of water that you have, it brings you new water after that. So we would submit that as much money as possible that you can put toward that statewide. It affects everyone and benefits everyone. So, and what has changed since this last water bond was put on the ballot? What has changed is we're in a massive drought of this generation, and recycling is what's going to get you out of that. We submitted to the governor's office yesterday 30 projects that are ready to go that can be built in the next 3 years that will give you 160,000 acre-feet of new water. And those projects are everywhere from Vacaville to the Contra Costa, Delta Diablo, LA Department of Water, Monterey, nothing in the Central Coast yet, but we're working in SoCal for Senator Monning. Those projects, though, cost probably close to $1 billion. So there will have to be a partnership and an investment between the state and those projects. Finally, a standalone section in any water bond is what's key, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. Recycled water for the last 30 years has been funded at the state level through the State Water Resources Control Board program. It works. Every drop of water that's been funded from the state, it's come through that program. We don't need to go through IRWIM. We don't need to go to the Department of Water Resources. The State Water Board has done a really good job of getting that money out the door. And guess what? The projects that have been funded statewide in those 30 years were competitive projects. So this isn't something that's not cost effective or white elephants or something. These are projects that are cost effective, that are competitive, and they're funded, and that's how it worked. One final point. Nope, I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that self-monitor. Okay. Jim?
Good morning, Senator. It's a pleasure to see you. I'm Jim Boyd. I'm here representing the Tahoe Fund. I'm a founding board member of the Tahoe Fund. It's a nonprofit organization created just 3 years ago, composed of members from Nevada and California who are raising money primarily from the private sector to augment that which the government has done in the past to preserve, protect, and enhance Lake Tahoe. I want to commend the Senator Wolk for her recognition of the role of other type agencies that some feel don't make a direct contribution to water supply. But neglected natural resource issues eventually do contribute to the kinds of issues you're talking about here today. I spent 8 years of my long career in California government at the Department of Water Resources in the 60s discussing the very issues you're dealing with today. I spent 4 years as Deputy Secretary of Natural Resources sitting on the Tahoe Conservancy. I know the roles they play and the contributions they make to solving the type problems such as preserving and protecting and enhancing the Tahoe Basin's watershed and all that goes to that, to the example set for what all Californians need to do. The Tahoe Conservancy, being one of the oldest, set the model for what other conservancies who were developed have done to preserve and protect California's water supply through the preservation and restoration of wetlands that we destroyed unknowingly years ago that did provide for watershed and for dealing with the consequences of fire and the restoration of forests and its preservation of water supply and the quality of that water. So I'm here to thank the author of this bill for recognizing that, to thank both senators, particularly Senator Pavley, for her long support for Lake Tahoe, and to commend the legislature for addressing these issues and hoping that in the final resolution of this problem, the integration, the fact that this is one giant system and all these pieces fit.
That's it, and thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members, Mike Dillon.
Mike, and then up front.
Thank you. Mike Dillon, representing the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, the major wastewater agencies. We appreciate your comments, Madam Chair, about the importance of recycled water and the many opportunities for additional uses. Under agreement right now, it's being worked on between the city of San Francisco and a huge Silicon Valley tech firm, is the use of recycled water for these huge servers that are situated in giant warehouses, I'm told almost the size of a city block, and use thousands and thousands of gallons of water. So that's just another type of use we're finding out. Many of our member agencies are also members of water reuse, so we would echo the sentiments of Richard Harris with reuse, and also with the Syndicate of Aqua that we set aside at a minimum $500 million for recycled water. It's has a proven track record, and we would urge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Clary. I'm a water policy analyst for Clean Water Action. And I saw you looking at me when you mentioned water quality, so I'm going to talk about something else today.
Good.
So I serve as the water chair for Green California. And for the past year, we've had dozens of organizations meeting to talk about our sometimes differing priorities and what we should be pushing and what we can agree on in the water bond. And I just want to point out that that this bond is unique in that it doesn't allow continuous appropriation for any part of the bond. And we feel that continuous appropriation is a disincentive for accountability. And I think it's going to generate a lot of opposition from the environmental community if continuous appropriation is included in a final bond measure. We also want to ensure that Delta funding goes to Delta projects that everyone agrees are needed for the short term. And I also, although I'm not talking about water quality, want to respond to Senator Lara, who I appreciate talked about affordability. And I'd like to point out that a water bond is not going to solve every problem. And I think it would be really great if part of the discussion of a water bond is what else you need and how else you can pay for it. Because it's not just small communities that can't afford their water. There's households everywhere that can't afford their rising water bill, and yet we have no capability of having a statewide lifeline rate. And there's many other issues as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Like we do on energy. Yes.
Madam Chair, members, Joe Cruz on behalf of the California State Council of Laborers. And I first want to start by thanking Senator Wolk and her hard work and diligence on this issue, an important issue facing all Californians. We support the intent and the overall goal of SB 48 to lower, to modify and basically retool the bond to make it more politically viable before voters. We have some serious concerns with restructuring the surface storage component and also the Delta sustainability piece. We all understand when the State Water Project was built in the 1960s, it was built for 7 million people. Now we're projected to have 38 million people in California, and something must be done to adequately meet our water supply for our future. I also want to touch just personally on the Delta. Having been raised and raised in the Delta, understand full well the complexity of that system. Spend a lot of time on those 1,000 miles of waterways and see firsthand these plastic sheeting and riprap that protect our water supply. We must fully fund that component to keep that water supply intact. Again, I thank you and look forward to working with you on this important issue.
Thank you. In the back here, by Senator Wilk, yes, and then we'll go here. Up. All right. You guys are very good.
Hi, I'm Haley Stewart with Defenders of Wildlife. Defenders appreciates the changes made to SB 848, but requests the following changes are made to improve the bill. First, include funding for refuge water supplies. Section 79755B of the current bond contains $100 million to purchase and deliver water to wildlife refuges and wildlife areas. Given the ongoing threats to the Pacific Flyway and the water needs facing the network of wildlife refuges in the Central Valley, we urge you to include explicit funding for this purpose in SB 848 as a prior version of SB 848 did. This funding would help the state meet its 25% share of the costs of delivering level 4 water to publicly owned or managed wildlife refuges. Second, refine the language regarding the funding for the Salton Sea to ensure that funds will be available for restoration. The current reference to the quantification settlement agreement could be read to provide funding only for the state's mitigation obligations and not its restoration obligations. By including the 3 statutes the legislature passed as part of the QSA package, the bond would clearly provide funding for restoration projects. Third, include increased funding for the Wildlife Conservation Board. The proposed amendments allocate the bulk of watershed funding through regional conservancies. While these agencies have demonstrated track record of delivering effective conservation, many important regions from a watershed perspective are not covered by a regional conservancy. For this reason, we recommend increasing funding for the Wildlife Conservation Board, as any region of the state, whether or not it's covered by a state conservancy, is eligible to compete for these funds. Thank you.
All right, thank you. There is 215 for the Wildlife Conservation Board in the mock-up form. In the back. Now we're ready.
Erica Arriaga with the League of California Cities Latino Caucus. We represent roughly 450 leaders in California. We respectfully oppose SB 848. We're looking for a comprehensive water bond, and we feel this falls short on a few issues that we can talk in this hearing today. Specifically, flood protection. We feel there's a lack in flood protection in not only the Central Coast, also in Southern California as well. Also in the flood control and stormwater section, we feel that there's a lack of seawater intrusion prevention and restoration of river channels funding for the Central Coast. And also, most importantly, which is most problematic, is the matching requirements for projects is nearly impossible for our disadvantaged communities.
They have the ability to waive those requirements. And the language is in the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Andy Fields with the California Alliance for Jobs. We represent 80,000 union construction workers amongst the laborers, operating engineers, and carpenters, as well as more than 2,000 heavy state construction contractors. I'd like to echo the words of my colleagues, Mr. Curtin and Mr. Cruz, who touched in their 2 minutes on some of the same issues that we have, so I won't repeat any of those. I'd like to thank Senator Wilk for being really the first on the Senate side to bring this up, and I don't envy her position or any of y'all's position, to be quite honest, of trying to find a solution to this whole whatnot. It's a hard lift, and we certainly appreciate anybody who's willing to tackle it. Having said that, there's been an undercurrent in this hearing, and I'd like to thank Mr. Lara and Mr. Hueso for really bringing it to the surface, and we hope that this is the same undercurrent that holds true in future hearings when we talk about the bond, and that's that we need to make sure that we have the most efficient use of state money. We believe that this particular bill, SB 848, can have an increased awareness of really what we're experiencing right now, the preponderance of wet and dry year cycles that's resulting in the drought that we're currently experiencing. We believe that this bill creates certain obstacles to build new storage or expand existing storage or address groundwater. Specifically, we've submitted a letter to the committee, and we'll be happy to submit further comments. We'd encourage you to take a look at Chapter 7, the public benefits section of the storage chapter. There's been two sections that have been taken out that we believe are very important, one for emergency preparedness or in response, and the other for recreation that would help the state use that money more efficiently to store more, manage better, and move more water around the state.
With that, I have to ask you.
Of course, thank you.
And next. And
Hi,
then we'll
good
go
morning.
Back.
My name is Todd Manley. I'm with the Northern California Water Association. We represent the water management entities and local governments in the Sacramento Valley in Northern California. While we have a opposed unless amended position on this bill, I really want to say that we do believe, my members do believe, that this provides a great foundation for the water bond discussion, and we are pleased with a number of the sections in the bill. In particular, the water rights language that's contained in the bill provides the certainty that allows for creative and collaborative efforts to address the water management challenges in the state, and we think that that's important and do appreciate that that's in the bill. In addition to that, the migratory corridors language is something that's very important to us. Both the Pacific Flyway as well as salmon migration is something that's really critical in this region and something that we consider to be very important. The water use efficiency section and language in the bill is something that's ever important in a drought time, is even more so. And then, of course, the water quality section, which we're not going to talk about today. And lastly, the groundwater management. I think a lot of folks have talked about this, and something that's very important in regions that have overdraft as well as those regions that don't, and establishing a management regime as well as monitoring is something that's really critical. So with that being said, we do believe that a substantial and meaningful investment in the storage section is also needed. In particular, it would really help with the flexibility of the state's water system. Surface water storage in particular would provide that flexibility that would address these challenges, and the other sections would as well. And so investing in that public benefit portion of these storage projects is something that's critical, and so we would ask that amount be increased as well as the continuous appropriation language be reinserted. Thank you.
Right, thank you. In the back, yes.
Thank you, Chair Pavley, members of the committee. My name is Ron Davis. I'm here today on behalf of Eastern Municipal Water District. Eastern is an importer of water that provides water and wastewater service in Riverside County. So they are a strong supporter of the idea of funding at a greater level than and just for the record, we do have an opposed unless amended position on the bill. I apologize. They would prefer to see greater funding for surface storage as well as continuing to use the continuous appropriation language. They'd also like to see further funding on the public benefits portion for the Delta chapter in order to maximize opportunities for meeting the co-equal goals, as well as supporting the approach that has been submitted to you by the Association of California Water Agencies. That framework is supported by Eastern, and with that, I'll appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ron.
Cynthia Vitale on behalf of the California...
Put the mic a little closer to you. Just pull it up. Yeah.
Thank you. Cynthia Vitale on behalf of the California Association of Local Conservation Corps in support. State and local conservation corps programs provide at-risk youth with job skill training, education, and invaluable work experience. We appreciate language in SB 848 that clarifies broad eligibility for conservation corps and will allow us to continue our commitment to improving resource management in communities across the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Timmer with the Sierra Business Council. On behalf of the Sierra Business Council's 4,000 supporters and partners, we want to thank Senator Wolk and her staff for all their work on this important issue. In a matter of just a couple of weeks, we've bounced from a record number of dry days in a row to a record amount of rainfall in a single day. But even after this incredible storm, the reservoirs in the northern part of the state are really only about one-third what they should be for this time of the year. Not to look a gift horse in the mouth, but the heavy rains are only going to increase sediment downstream thanks to other record-breaking events like the Rim Fire. Scientists warn that we're likely to see more drought and serious wildfires in the future. If we're to prepare for that kind of situation, we need to acknowledge the connection between our forests and our water supply and take action to improve both. SB 848 helps to address this need. We support much of what's included in this bill, including Chapter 7's focus on protecting and improving watersheds, wetlands, and forests, and distribution of funding through conservancies. However, we are concerned about a few things, including the fact that the Sierra Nevada Conservancy receives less than 1% of the overall bond funding, even though the area provides more than 60% of the state's developed water supply and half the inflow to the Delta. Also, the $44 million originally allocated to the IRWM Mountain County's overlay area seems to have been removed, as has funding for the abandoned mine remediation efforts. And we believe that without these two programs, there's no guarantee that money is going to be spent for projects in the state's principal watershed of the Sierra Nevada. Given the important connection between forest and watershed management and overall supply, we request that these amounts be restored and that funds get allocated based on the contribution that an area makes to statewide supply rather than strictly on population. We also recommend creation of a $500 million statewide fund for forest and fuels projects that fulfill the headwaters management objectives laid out in the Governor's California Water Action Plan. And we echo all the comments in support of funding through conservancies made so far today. Thank you.
Thank you.